with my recital in February of '72, like I said, I wasn't exactly sure when I took my first lesson to go up and see Roy Stevens, whether it was the end of '71 or the beginning of '72. And I mean, I didn't go up like weekly or anything like that, but I went up a couple times since I was, going back, like more than once. It was beyond, like I said, with the meeting the guy the previous summer that was hitting all these high notes on trumpet. I was intrigued by this enough to, make trips to New York and go back to see Roy. I mentioned earlier that Roy talked about, playing with your teeth even and your jaw coming forward if you're naturally receded, which I am. So he had these different exercises. I'm gonna really fly through this fast. You can take a pencil, or this is a pen. He had these little popsicle sticks, and so the idea was this is to start to train your jaw to stay in a more forward position. And so by doing that, in other words, if the pencil's pointing down like this, you're receded. Your bottom teeth are back. Now, if you have the pencil parallel to the ground, your teeth are pretty much evened up. And then if you go even further forward where the pencil's pointing up, well, that's going to mean that your bottom teeth are now beyond your top teeth. So he had, this was all to, to train you to get used to this new position. You could have an exercise where you're just working your jaw in and out to get the feeling of all that. Then the idea was when you train your teeth to stay even, once again, this is to provide the platform for the mouthpiece to sit on. Now, you start out like with your chops just in a relaxed position, lightly touching each other. And now you got this pencil in there. And then the idea was you start your air up, and when the air hits your chops react to the airstream hitting them, and like with a scissors action coming in from your corners. Now this is not a pucker and it's not a smile, but your corners sort of respond to the air. And then, so you start blowing past the pencil. And then you can start the air and then pull the pencil out while you're blowing air, and and this is training your jaw to stay in position like that. So okay, so these were the early lessons. He had a book with drawings in it, and you got like muscle that goes through your lips, and you got muscles that radiate out. They look kind of like almost like spokes on a wheel. And there's a buccinator muscle that comes down and inserts. He could explain all this stuff to death. Of course, that's like a real technical explanation. On the other hand, if you got things in the right position and all that, it's almost like you don't even need to know that, the technical end of it. So then, so the next step is, I got a trumpet and a trombone here. It's easier to show on trumpet. Then he has this palm exercise where, this is so that you do almost like that same blowing exercise, but now you're adding the horn, but you're not this is to keep you from coming back with too much weight. So you sit the trumpet. I'll do it with a trombone later, but it's harder to do. The whole idea is, this is to prevent you from coming back in hard with the weight. So in other words, if you would pull back too much, it would just, horn would just slip off your hand. So you can, so that's the palm exercise. So on trombone, it looks like this. And the whole is, don't try not to grab it with your fingers here, and so you'd be cheating and pulling it. So this was in early '72, and I took a couple lessons in that time frame after my senior recital, and started to get into Roy's theories more and all that. And what I discovered was that sort of like what was missing from the way I had been doing it before was that when you're going to like go into the upper register from the middle or low register, you have to kind of lean in to the bottom of the mouthpiece, sort of lean forward, like push forward with your jaw. In other words, the opposite what I had done is closing off and collapsing, but you want to kind of think more this way and sort of like push. You're not really going to move any distance because you have the mouthpiece weight there, but you're going to sort of lean against it. So it's like I'm pushing rather than where you're going to collapse this way. You're gonna build more air pressure forward and then sort of lean forward with your bottom jaw, your bottom teeth, and then and keep blowing more air pressure past all that. Okay, so the conclusion I came to myself in that time period was I was going to try and retrain myself to do that, to start, training myself. With Reinhardt, it's almost like you're going to like pivot in the opposite direction, but that's really not what it was either. It was going to train myself to try to push forward with my jaw to go in the upper register rather than the opposite. This is like spring of '72 as I was finishing school. And it took a couple months. It kind of threw me off a little bit, accuracy and being a little bit indecisive and all this. But it got better over time and really didn't take that long. I mean, I could keep playing while I was making this change. It wasn't too bad. And let's say by the summer of '72, after I got out of college, it was doing pretty good. And I had a summer gig with a rock band that summer in Wildwood, New Jersey, and that really helped to lock my chops in real good. And so this is going through 1972 into '73. I attempted to move to LA in fall of '72, and that backfired, and I found myself back in Pennsylvania again in '73. That's when I started doing road bands, the Glenn Miller band and Kenton's band and all this. And at that point, I was playing a Con 78H with, this is the mouthpiece I used on it. It was a Bach 11C with the throat hole opened up and the cup scraped out to make it a little more V-shaped. And so my chops were strong through all that. On Kenton's band, I played third. There were two tenors. Dick Shear played lead and Lloyd Spoon played second. I played third. And then the two bass trombones, Bill Hartman and Mike Wallace. I think Dick has played his old Bach 12 that he had with an 11C, like I had mentioned before. He had his throat hole drilled out to about 1/4 of an inch. That's kind of like where I got the idea from him. I played third with the 78H, which even though it was a little bigger, it played pretty bright, kind of bright. And I felt like it was a good link between the first and second, and then the two bass trombones underneath me. I was 22 years old at that point. After I got off Kenton's band, I was back in Atlanta and had a house band gig at the Fairmont Hotel, playing like star acts with like Tony Bennett and Jack Jones and some acts like that. That's the same horn and mouthpiece that I used on that gig to do all that. But what I started to notice was in that playing situation, I had to play all different kinds of styles of music. And, in other words, it was more than just blowing full force all the time. So with that horn and this mouthpiece, I felt like, let's say I had to play some ballad lead or something behind, say, a Tony Bennett or something like that. Maybe some sustained stuff where you're playing backgrounds. I had to really fight the that horn. That was a little bit too big a setup, for that type of situation. I mean, I could fight it, but it was kind of hard to center, because everything was kind of spread. With that, I decided, maybe I wanted to try to start going a little smaller on the equipment. So that's when I picked up this King 3B toward my last time in Atlanta. It was not quite brand new, but almost brand new. It certainly looked a lot better than this one looks now. This is now like 50 years old or so. I guess I still probably use that 11C drilled out on the King 3B, and so that helped that situation. And but then I left the gig. I don't know, after a couple months or something. The business situation wasn't so good down on that gig, and so I gave notice, and then the gig ultimately folded a few months after I left it anyway. And so I came back to Philly. Through this time, if I came up from Atlanta on vacation or something like that, maybe I would go see Roy like once in a year or something like that. So there was some time that, I didn't really see him that much when I lived in Atlanta. When I moved back from Atlanta in 76, leaving the gig in Atlanta, for example, I wanted to, further my career. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted maybe sort of pursue playing more as like an artist type, as opposed to being like a freelancer, because naturally what I, like most of us, end up doing, our careers are sort of a mixture of both, where you're playing as, like an artistic musician, as opposed to, you know contracting yourself out like an electrician or something. When I got back to Pennsylvania in the fall of 76, I went up and took a lesson with Roy. That was a great place to hang out anyway, and I hadn't seen him in a while. So I went up and took a lesson with him and all that. I mean, my chops were really good at that point, and everything was cool with that. And so when I came home after that lesson or thereabouts, I decided, this is sort of I was kind of working up to this decision. This is another turning point. I decided I was going to try to go more as a solo artist type. I wanted to take this Roy Stevens thing that I had been doing, like the way I described it over at that point, maybe 4 years. And I decided, because I thought, like, it seemed like most of his students were trumpet players, and not too many trombone players were in there. And I thought, well, maybe I can take this Roy Stevens thing and really go crazy and sort of be like a protege of it and all that. And that's when I decided to kind of like immerse myself in it. Now, where I lived in Bucks County was about 70 miles from New York City, where Roy's studio was. So it involved me, either driving or taking like a train or something like that. It was an ordeal one way or another to even go up there to do the lessons. But I decided that I was going to try to dive in further to this Roy Stevens thing, and really try to take, his method of doing things, as we would say now, to another level. Okay.